When David and James asked me to give this talk, particularly about a treatment that we recently did on one of the Rothko Seagram murals, it got me thinking about the whole series of murals and actually the choices that conservators have made over the past 50 years to manage their condition. So it was really an opportunity to think about our recent project against the previous work and really take a moment to evaluate the impact. So I've gone slightly off piste as well. So these are the 9 paintings that comprise the Tate Seagram murals. Mark Rothko originally painted more than 30 canvases as a commission for the Seagram building in New York between July 1958 and the spring of 1960, when he withdrew from the commission and returned payments. Following a series of discussions and visits from 1965 onwards with Sir Norman Reid, the director of Tate Gallery, these works were selected and they arrived at Tate on the 25th of February 1970, which is also the very sad day of the artist's death as well. So it has huge significance for us at the Tate that day. But anyway, these works had a life before Tate. There was approximately 10 years between their creation and their arrival. And 6 of them were included in MoMA's seminal exhibition and tour in 1961. 3 of them had been restored in New York and had glue paste linings and various degrees of retouching of the surface. There were various small scuffs, cracks, and scratches visible. And it's really useful for us to know that the artist selected them in this state, which was very good condition. They were in excellent condition, but they weren't pristine. And that's really helpful for us. Almost as soon as they went on display in May of 1970, the works were established as iconic. So there they are on display in a room. Now, the word iconic has a very particular meaning within Tate curatorial and conservation departments. It means that the works are so significant to the collection that there's an expectation that they are continually on display and accessible to the public. This includes, as well as works like Matisse's Snail, Millet's Ophelia, a number of Turner paintings. And this status has implications for their preservation as they're continuously subjected to the risks associated with the display. So how and when they're shown has a big impact on their condition. And these choices are discussed and agreed at Tate with input from conservation, curatorial, and directors, obviously. And there are certain conditions of their installation which are negotiated amongst these individuals and teams, and in conjunction, obviously, with the wishes of the artist. The works are, for example, always shown as a group in a room with no artworks by other artists, usually in subdued lighting conditions and with a gray wall color to match that selected by the artist. The concept was stretched slightly for the 2008 exhibition when the group was expanded to include additional works from the series owned by the National Gallery of Art in Washington and the Kawamura Gallery in Japan, and they shifted the wall color to match that which was specified for the Whitechapel exhibition in '61. But other than a few variations like that, we've been pretty much consistent in how they've been shown. So these are the key factors affecting these works on display, and they should hold no surprises. However, they're worth stating for these particular works, as these works are all visibly affected by these factors, and I'll give a few examples shortly. So we've got light, dust, handling, interference from the public, and protection, layers of protection. So in reviewing the conservation records for all these works, it was apparent that the continual display had an impact both good and bad, because while exposing the works to these factors, they also provided great opportunities to examine and monitor the works. They provided moments of learning to improve their care, and they were prioritized, which is a really key factor. These were priorities for Tate and priorities for us to investigate and learn about. So these are some key moments when all the paintings were examined or treated. There were lots of other notes in the files that affected individual works, but these were key moments when when something happened to them as a group. 1970, they arrived and the records were established, and that is really key because that's the moment where we kind of establish their condition and judge all the changes against that. In 1975, I've got this note of barriers. So in 1975, barriers went in, and that was because in the previous 5 years, there'd been a series of small incidents, minor incidents, that required some intervention from the cons team. And barriers going in is not an insignificant moment, particularly for these works, because they are they form a room, so it really does make a difference putting barriers in. And it's a very brief note in the file. It was like, this is the action taken, barriers were installed. But knowing how things work at Tate, I know that action certainly didn't occur without huge and prolonged discussions between conservation and curatorial. What I don't know is how far they went in the discussions. Did they go so far as to say, well, maybe we should consider framing and glazing them? Again, it's certainly an option. It would certainly better preserve the works. However, it was clearly that was a step too far. They didn't do that, but they did agree to put in a barrier. So I thought that was a very interesting moment. Another interesting moment was in 1980, when they were being prepared for another display, there's a note on TO 1169 from Roy Perry. And I just want to make sure I get this right. He notes, areas of light abrasions were not treated to avoid polishing the scattering paint surface. I thought this was really key because it's the first notation in the file of an inaction, something they chose not to do because there were concerns that it would affect the paintings in a different way, that it was acceptable to have light scuffs visible on the surface. And they had been disguising light scuffs and abrasions and scratches. So this, again, was a shift in this consideration of the surface. And I thought this was really key because this awareness of the surface is a really key thing for these paintings, something that was reinforced by Dana Cranmer's seminal paper given at ICOM-CC in 1987, which highlighted the importance of the surfaces for these particular works. There were a couple of other things that we might not do today, but I'm not second-guessing them because these are decisions that they made. In 88-89, in preparation for a loan to Tate Liverpool, there was a weak solution of B72 brushed onto the outer edges, which is original paint all along the outer edges. And they applied the B72 because every time they were being handled, they were being polished and damaged. So they did it as a protective measure. It's actually not a visible layer. If you know B72, for those conservators in the audience, it's quite a viscous acrylic, but it was in a very dilute form, just enough to sort of consolidate those edges and provide a surface that could be handled. The following moments, there were following moments which were key as well. There was a start of analysis and the realization that better understanding of the structure would be key to their care. And these were also key moments for staff to gain experience in working with the paintings. So here's the red on maroon that David so kindly showed earlier. Let me just... sluggish. Okay, so here we have an image of the painting, and here we've got some beautiful photomicrographs taken with the Hyrox 3D imaging system from the 2007 project, which led into the exhibition of 2008, which David showed the catalog image from. This is just to give you a brief insight into the impact of light on these paintings. In the red paints, Rothko included on all of the base layers and in some of the upper layers of red, there was occasionally some lithol red or PR49, which is incredibly light sensitive and which fades pretty rapidly with exposure to light. So what this image shows is you can still see some particles of the ultramarine blue, because this beautiful maroon paint is a combination of the ultramarine blue and the red, and you can see it's mainly blue visible on the surface, but you can also see how degraded that layer is, and that's a layer of damar resin, excuse me, on the surface. And this degradation of the damar, this physical degradation, which is caused through this chemical process, has also contributed to the change in appearance of this work, because you get more scattering of light, and it's much whiter than it would be otherwise if it was just plain fading. And at the time, Yap Bone postulated that the ultramarine pigment might have actually catalyzed the degradation and increased the rate of change, which is why one of the reasons why the appearance of this one has shifted more so than other works from within the series. So in 2012, when we did our treatment, Joyce Townsend looked into fading further, using reflectance spectra and microfading tests on other paintings and samples to determine if the fading of lithol red would continue, or were we done? Is that it? We've done all the damage we can do. She presented the results in a poster at the most recent ICOM-CC in Australia, and it's apparent that the lithol red containing paints are at blue wool equivalence 2 or 3, which basically means they are still susceptible to ongoing change and fading. So this work has visibly changed, and at a different rate to the rest of the selected group. So here's a question to consider. Is this still authentic? Does it affect the authenticity of the grouping? Does it affect the authenticity of this work when it's viewed in the gallery? I'm not going to answer that. I'll let you guys think about that. So here's a reflected light image taken in 2007, and it really shows off the surface qualities of Rothko's paint. The frame or figure has this selected coating on it, which is this damar egg coating that Rothko used to modify it. It looks quite reflective there, but it's actually a really semi-gloss sort of finish to it. And in the dim gallery, the play of light is very subtle, and the viewer becomes aware of this as they move through the space. It's very dynamic as you catch the shifting surfaces and the play of light. It's really effective, and it's one of the main reasons that conservators have chosen to dust the surfaces of these works in the gallery. Now, using a soft brush on a surface does not seem very interventive, but imagine, reflect back on the image I just showed you of that very fragile, degraded damar surface. And these surfaces are so delicate that any undue mechanical force was marking them. Now, this activity, as well as that, also carries a potential for physical risks, as the works are, these are huge paintings. The work is often done on ladders or from a genie at great height. However, in balancing the risks of doing the dusting, the choice in this case comes down on the side of the surface nuance. The dust layer flattens and evens out the surface. It reduces the subtle play of light. So when this becomes apparent, usually every 2 or 3 years, that the works are on galleries, or that the works are on display in galleries, this risk is taken. In 1999-2000, in fact, there was a major treatment project by Mary Bustin and Rachel Barker, which included a close surface cleaning using molecular trap to get off even more of the embedded dirt that had built up over the previous 30 years. And I know that when they did this treatment, every single trade-off, every risk-benefit was considered and assessed and done in close consultation with curators as well. Okay, so this is one of the red on maroon, and I'm just going to show you another image from 2007, which this is a detail at the top edge of the work in normal light, and this is a detail under ultraviolet light. And as David said, one of the things that was published in that catalog of 2008 was all the different paint media. There were up to 6 paint media used in various combinations across these 9 paintings. And it was a really lovely moment to look at and contemplate and understand why they look the way they look. And in the gallery, this is the red on maroon is It's very, very subtle, and it just all becomes apparent in ultraviolet light, where you can see the different layers of paint, and you can see everybody talks about the edges and the brushstrokes of Rothko, and you can really see it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't just because he used a 5-inch house painting brush. He pulls back the paint from the edges, so you get this concentration of subtle activity at these edges. He has this the damar and egg surface on here to create this gloss, and you get this play of gloss against matte, you get the activity of the brushstroke, you get the activity of these subtly different colored paints all concentrating at the edge. And as you walk through the gallery, sometimes you can't see that, you can't resolve that in the gallery, but you can tell something's happening. You get the flicker, as they call it, with the Rothko, and it just makes the surfaces so important and key for these works. So anyway, up to 2012, the conservation team was dealing with standard display issues, light, dust handling, minor interventions, protection. Changes had occurred, but they were mainly subtle and treatments were minimal. And then this happened. So I don't know if you can see that. So on Sunday, on a Sunday in October 2012, I received a phone call when I was at home enjoying my weekend that a Rothko painting had been damaged at Tate Modern. So I was on site in under an hour and found black on maroon, TO 1170, in this condition. Black ink was drawn on the lower right-hand corner and penetrated very quickly through the paint and canvas, drying almost instantly. It turns out that this ink was a graffiti product designed specifically to be fast-acting, quick-drying, highly staining, and permanent. It's actually a really, really beautiful product when it's not being used on our Rothkos. Okay. So here it is under ultraviolet light, and this is helpful because you can really see, it's much easier to visualize against this. This fluorescing green under ultraviolet is the damar resin coat and egg coating. And what is interesting is you see the tag is mainly over this resin-coated area. Now, in these areas, the solvent of the ink, the carrier solvent for the ink, actually dissolved that resin on contact. So we lost the resin coating in those areas, but actually it did help protect the paint layers underneath because of the quick drying nature of the ink. So it limited further penetration in these areas. However, this maroon coating along this bottom edge and some of that black paint did not have the coating. And you can really see it was much more highly affected and there was more penetration in those areas. Now, this painting by Rothko is made up of thin layers of paint and glaze in different media, and initial tests showed us that most of the solvents which would remove the ink would also affect Rothko's paint. The conservation challenge was for us to explore and exploit small differences in their behavior and to modify cleaning techniques in order to try and separate the ink from the painting while limiting any effects on the paint surface. Okay. So this image shows the really glossy slick of ink sitting on the maroon surface under magnification. This is a Hyrox image. And you can see how textured the maroon paint is at a microscopic level with raised lumps of pigment. And you can start to see some of the tiny cracks and fissures in the maroon paint, which means that on the back of the canvas, this shows how some of the ink flowed through the small cracks and fissures in the paint, penetrating right through the canvas, and the flow through this was more apparent in the area of the maroon and less so in the black. That was really limited to through cracks and fissures. So given the nature of the paint and the ink, and because of this penetration through the paint and canvas, we knew it would be difficult to fully remove the ink from the painting without affecting the original paint. The project goal, therefore, was to return the painting to displayable condition, eradicating all visible evidence of the ink under normal gallery conditions. And we were very specific that we weren't going to reverse this. We couldn't take it back to what it was before. All we could do was try to recover the surface and disguise the surface to the extent that it became displayable. Now, this project was also extremely public. Images of the damage were on Twitter within minutes of the incident. It was picked up internationally by the press, and due to the nature of the incident and the importance of these works, we knew there would be exceptional scrutiny of the project, and we knew we needed to be accountable in a very public way, which is it's very unusual. So the first question we considered was, do we restore the painting? It's a fundamental question which needed to be asked. Our answer was yes, obviously. If we could do it, we would do it. This painting formed part of a significant group, specifically chosen by the artist, and that group would have been diminished by the loss of this piece. The tagging would be well documented, it was already acknowledged, but it was agreed not to be an artwork intervention of value in comparison to the group of Seagram murals. I don't know if anybody here disagrees. There was certainly a lot of commentary on Twitter. Okay. Sorry, more text slides. But this is really important because this was our plan and structure, and it really helped make the project work. We kept the immediate treatment team, this group here, very, very small. There were just 3 of us, a conservation scientist, a conservator, and a manager. And it enabled the idea was we would be quick and nimble and ninja-like and able to draw on expertise while needed, but be very responsive and quick to deal with new information. And we really wanted to have excellent communication. We knew if we stayed small, we would be able to respond and react and investigate very quickly. Pairing the conservation scientist with the conservator worked exceptionally well wherever possible. I would always recommend that combination. And we were really fortunate at Tate that we had this set of experts who had 15 years of experience treating modern and contemporary paint surfaces, who had conducted research into the chemistry and behavior of modern and contemporary paints. And their experience and contacts also meant that we could draw on expertise from throughout the arts communities, scientists, curators, conservators, and other experts. Also key was having an advisory group. They worked really closely with us, but at an arm's length. It was 2 curators, Matthew and Achim, and a lot of you will know Jay Kruger from the National Gallery of Art in Washington, where he's the head of paintings conservation there. They have some of the Seagram murals at the National Gallery of Art in Washington. And Jay is incredibly experienced and was so kind and agreed to do this for us and just contributed huge amounts to this project. So we had reasonably wide-ranging consultation, and these are just some of the people, a few of you in the audience, thank you very much, who were consulted and gave their time and their opinions. The consultation focused on 3 main areas of research: learning more about the paintings to create appropriate testing substrates, to learn about the ink and its behavior and its constituents, and to develop that removal system, that all-important ink removal system. And due to the delicacy of this surface, we decided we needed to limit testing on the actual painting. And this was an early decision, and I think it was very difficult for the treatment team because I think it was very frustrating because if you had something you thought might work, we couldn't take it to the painting. We needed to test everything, all the systems we were going to test on test substrates first, and this was because we knew the delicacy of the surfaces, and we decided it was important to slow down and consider the impact. So is that 2 minutes left? Okay, so I'm going to whiz. Okay, it's okay. You'll get to see some pictures. So I just wanted to take a moment to thank not only these contributors, but to note again that because of that whole history of contribution and those moments of intervention and investigation by these and many other people, this enabled our team to respond very effectively. So I think the expression is standing on the shoulders of giants, and it's the cumulative impact of this 50 years of observation, treatment, analysis, investigation, and contemplation, which really supported and enabled our initiative. And I can't say that enough. These are the people who were directly involved in this project, but actually all those people from the previous 50 years were also directly involved because we used what they had written, all of their insights. It's a really important thing to have this community of expertise. So this was the treatment plan, and I just wanted to note that between the research and testing phase and the ink removal, we had a colloquium of experts. We decided we needed another moment where we had this oversight beyond even our treatment and advisory team. We invited this group to the Tate, we showed them the painting, we described what we'd done, and we were so grateful because they gave us their time and their opinions, and we wanted those experts, we wanted those people who would question what we did, criticize what we did, offer up those options, see what we hadn't seen. And that was a really important moment for us because it really opened up the discussion. We'd been hiding a little bit because we'd been talking to individuals, but we'd never really opened this up to a group because of the level of scrutiny for this project. And it really gave us the confidence to move forward to the ink removal stage, which was effectively, Rachel under a microscope, working away with her system. Now, I'm aware that you do need to see what happened with the project. So I'm going to whip through some lovely images. Rachel and Bronwyn created this reference sample, which was building on a lot of the information from the previous investigations about what the paint constituents were to use as a test surface. It was an absolutely key part of the project. And just to note that they presented papers on this at ICOM-CC last year. So if you're interested in the details of the project, I'm not going to talk through them here. You can go read their papers. Their papers are fantastic. So here's just designing the ink removal system. And this is the image I really wanted you to see because this is what we were afraid would happen on the painting. If you dropped the wrong solvent on that ink, it just spread. And because of the porous nature of that paint, there was a real risk that this would happen on the painting. So here's the ink removal. This is our very first test on the actual painting. And you can see this is the surface that was recovered, which matched the original surface here very, very well. We still lost the damar coating, but you can see that we got rid of this kind of slick of hideous ink. And there's the little test there. So cute, such a good moment. Okay, and this was more of the ink removal, and these were the blotting tissues that Rachel used, and it was so helpful to speak to conservators like Carol Mancusi-Ongaro and Sandra Aman, who really helped develop this system for us to remove the ink. And then, okay, here we go. So here is the bottom right corner detail. Here is getting rid of that signature. Now, also a very good moment. There's one letter left. And just to note, you can see what an amazing job Rachel did on the painting up here. But you can see there's still quite a lot of stuff down here in the maroon. And that, again, just shows you how much more porous that surface was and the impact of that. So this is with the letter. This is with the letter removed, and you can still see the residues of the black ink, and then that's the restored surface detail there. And there's the before and after, which is, again, just a really great moment. So let me get down to my notes, because I do have a conclusion. So as part of the public accountability, Tate Media filmed the entire treatment, and the short documentary was posted on Tate's website, YouTube, and it's actually on show in a gallery adjacent to the works currently, and that's had a tremendous public response. So please do have a look at the film. It was really wonderful. And I'm still impressed that Rachel managed to clean with the camera in her face. I just wanted to say that upon reflection, neither this painting nor any of the works at the Tate currently look the same as they did when the artist sent them to the gallery 55 years ago. They've all changed. Sometimes it's minor change, sometimes it's major and visible. And it's important to know that they will continue to be affected as long as they are displayed and maintained and treated in future. And we expect to do all of these things to them in future. We can't freeze them at a moment in time. All we can do is manage that. We make our choices and we live with the consequences of that. However, the question remains, despite the changes, are the paintings still authentic as individual works and as group? I think so. I'm impressed with the care with which my colleagues have taken to preserve the fundamental authenticity of the group and the surfaces. And I think they've managed to achieve a decent balance between intervention and change. and I think it's mainly been appropriate. And however, I'm now interested to see what you think and whether you would make different choices in our shoes. So over to you. Thank you.